Imagine you're holding your 4-month-old baby and decide, I'm going to move to another country. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what I did. And what I didn't expect was to find out that being a mother far from home would be much more challenging than any parenting manual said. Today, I want to talk about a journey within the journey, that of being an immigrant mother. Welcome to Mothers in Journey. I am Juliana Mazzi, and today's episode is Motherhood and Immigration, the Double Challenge. And if you're an immigrant, if you no longer have your parents, if you move to a new city after having children, or if you simply feel distant from the people who knew you before motherhood, this episode is for you. Because being a mother far from home is one of life's most difficult journeys. And look, only those who live it understand. Camille was 4 months old when we decided to move from Brazil to Portugal. I remember opening Trello and creating a list. Move to Portugal. Visas, documents for the dogs, we have two. House, work, in short, the bureaucracies that a life change of this size demands. I remember calculating that we would need about 6 months to organize everything. We had an emergency fund, Camille's vaccination, veterinarian for the dogs, translated documents. We had to sell all our things. But you know what wasn't on that list? What I completely forgot: how I would emotionally handle being a mother in a place where no one knew me, where I would have to start everything from scratch, literally. In Brazil, even when overwhelmed, I had that support network, right? The cleaning lady who came twice a week, my dogs went weekly to a daycare, the laundry service picked up the clothes at home. I had a great friend from work who helped me a lot when I returned from leave. And when I arrived in Portugal, what was I, right? I was just a Brazilian immigrant and the mother of a baby less than 1 year old. For me, at that time, I was already struggling to find myself in motherhood. It was like losing another layer of my identity. The worst part is we have no control over life, right? And that's when life itself played a trick on me. Because no matter how planned our move was, in Portugal, everything, absolutely everything went wrong. And then in less than 3 months, we decided to move countries again and ended up here in Italy. With two radical moves in 3 months. And when you have a baby under 1 year old, 3 months is practically a lifetime. And then being an immigrant mother brings challenges that mothers in their home country can't even imagine. And I'm not just talking about missing home. First, you don't have a maternal reference nearby. In my specific case, unfortunately, my mother had already passed away before I even moved here. So, when Camille got sick, or when I had doubts, when I just needed to hear, "You're doing a good job," there was no one. Second, you need to learn to be a mother following the rules of another country. And it's crazy because there's a different healthcare system, different pediatric recommendations, different vaccines, a completely different cultural code. And I went through this twice in 3 months. First in Portugal, where when we arrived, I had to learn all of this quickly. And then again here in Italy. And then the third point is that you are constantly divided between two cultures. And in my case, it was three again. Because all my planning, I am a Virgo. So all my planning was organized for Portugal. My mindset was focused on Portugal. It was a country I already knew, where I had already worked, where I spoke the same language. In my mind, Portugal was organized, right? And then moving to Italy was like throwing all my mindset, all my emotions, all my planning for Portugal in the trash to dive into a completely unknown universe. And my husband, he was living the same whirlwind as I was. So he was the only person who understood the weight of this crossing. But even he didn't realize the extent of the internal transformation I was experiencing because he was also going through an internal transformation. And the friends from Brazil, they knew who we are but didn't understand the challenges here. And the people here saw the current reality but don't know my story. So it's a very crazy thing. It's as if I were a person split in half. So I need to learn to be a mother, a woman, a professional with this feeling of not being whole anywhere. And there was a day that marked this journey a lot, which will stay in my memory for the rest of my life. We arrived in Italy at the end of winter and it was still snowing. So, the first house we stayed in had no water and no gas because the real estate agency forgot to request the connection before our arrival. We had to bathe in a borrowed studio apartment 500 meters away. It wasn't far, but it was cold, it was raining, and it was a student's house. So there we were, a whole family in their 40s, squeezing into an old studio here in Italy. And then the heating in the studio didn't always work, so it was very cold to shower a baby. And besides the heating not working, sometimes the water also didn't get warm enough. So I remember leaving Camille without a bath for days. And there I was in a cold studio apartment trying to take care of her and thinking, my God, what have I done with my life? Did I take my daughter out of Brazil for this? That night I cried. I think it was the first time I cried a lot after I moved from Brazil out of fear and loneliness. I realized that I had chosen a path where, in the most difficult moments of motherhood, I would be alone. And then, as time went by, I began to understand that being an immigrant mother means learning to be your own support network. And I was already going through this process due to maternal grief itself, because I lost my mother 7 years ago today. So, I already noticed this transformation where I end up becoming the daughter who asks for advice, while at the same time being the experienced mother who gives advice. And then I started writing everything down in my phone's notepad, right? The doubts, the discoveries, the fears, the small victories. Because I started realizing that in the midst of this whole whirlwind, something new was being built, a unique way for me to be a mother, mixing a bit of what I brought from Brazil with what I was learning here in this new reality. And now, almost 2 years later, do you know what I discovered? That this mix, even being the hardest mix I've ever experienced in my life, is creating something beautiful. It's creating a journey that is mine alone. And I don't want to romanticize any of these on this channel. Quite the opposite. It's very difficult. But I also need to say that we learn a lot of cool things. It's really an internal transformation. And the first things I learned were that you develop a huge maternal independence. Each decision strengthens my self confidence as a mother. The second thing is that you build deep bonds with people you choose. There are friendships here that are really crazy and they become family. And you realize, I think it's one of the most incredible things about this journey that you offer your daughter a worldview that she might not have otherwise. Camille is seeing from an early age that there are different ways to live and to be a family. She is already learning a new language. She already speaks in two languages at almost 3 years old. And then the greatest discovery has been this, that being an immigrant mother is not losing an identity, but expanding it. It is becoming a richer, more complex, stronger version. The process is arduous, it takes time, but it seems to be worth it. And there are still days when obviously I feel an immense longing for Brazil, right? For the food, the culture, the comforts that Brazil offers. But there are days when, thanks to the absence of that, I feel an immense sense of the courage I had to give my daughter a life with more possibilities, with more cultural richness. And if you are also a mother far from home, I want you to know your journey matters. Your struggles are real and your courage is inspiring. Next week, I will talk about maternal guilt, especially the kind that appears when you know everything about education but still feel very lost. Because one thing is theory and another is living in practice. But today, I want to hear from you. What is the biggest challenge as a mother far from your support network? What do you miss the most? And how do you manage to handle all of this? Share with me in the comments and also give us your tips. And remember, choosing a different path to raise your children is not only courageous, it's a gift you give to them and to yourself. Until the next conversation. And remember, okay, you are stronger than you think.